Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Is everyone ready for a fantastic set of news? I think we have some interesting things in the pipeline. Not a ton of cloud stuff, but a lot of stuff. There's some cloud things, some things that might be interesting for you, but we have a decent amount on AI. There was a couple products released. There's some comments. There's some developing news stories in the AI world. Then there's some stuff around the open source community that I wanted to bring up that I saw. Um, I also want to talk about my streaming schedule for the next 2 weeks because there's going to be a few adjustments to it. And yeah. Now we're going to close with an article I found that I decided not to read. I'll read it with you guys, called 10 Coding Habits That Make You a Bad Programmer. We're going to have fun with that one because not only are we going to get to see, give our thoughts on those things, but we're going to get to see which ones I do. Because I'm sure that I do at least 5 out of 10. I'm pretty sure. At least 5 out of 10. So, that should be pretty good, I think. You know what? You know what I did not do? Let me update the titles here. Update the titles. The All right. There we go. Titles have been updated. All right. So, let's go ahead and get started. In security, I have an interesting one. I was going, when I first read this, my goal was kind of to take the side of this person and get some people to rally behind them because, they did some good work. And I'm going to show off the work because it is good work still. But I also, after digging into it, understand Microsoft's side of things. So let's talk about this. I found this post on Reddit. I found a remote code execution bug in VS Code that can be triggered from untrusted workspaces. Microsoft fixed it, but marked it as moderate severity and ineligible under their bug bounty program. So basically, Microsoft has a bug bounty program where anything critical is payable. Um, and the misleading thing about this, post is it was not a remote code execution bug. Now, I went through and read their entire blog post, to try to understand why it only got a moderate severity. Now, the reason it did is it's not a remote code. It's not a remote code execution. In the end, it's not a remote code execution. And to actually further my point, because I read extra. Hey Russell, how are you doing today? I read extra just to make sure my understanding of remote code execution, because I'm not, I do a lot with security, but I'm not a security professional. I got CloudStrike's here's definition of a remote code execution, which follows under my understanding. a remote code allows a class of cyber attacks in which attackers remotely execute commands, place malware or other malicious code on your computer or network. In a RCE, or remote code execution attack, there is no need for user input from you. That's why this is not. What he did, which again is cool, and Microsoft actually patched what they found, is that there was a way in a trusted, yes, I trust the authors of this folder, to basically run malicious code. Even if you clicked the no, I don't trust the authors. Now there's a couple addendums to this where that they even mention here is that third-party plugins aren't covered by Microsoft. Where did he do that? Anyways, third-party plugins aren't covered under Microsoft's thing because they're they're plugins. And so that's not covered under Microsoft's bug bounty. Oh, you thought you this is why, like, anytime I think I find a security vulnerability, I just assume that it was something I did dumb. And you're much better than I am, so it's probably a valid thing. So anyways, I wanted to congratulate this guy on some good work because he found a bug, a legitimate bug that got fixed. It didn't fall under the thing, but the remote code execution was the problem. It's not actually remote code execution because you actually have to download the code and open it up in Visual Studio Code. So it actually requires a local user's input to do. So anyhow, that was one thing. I thought that this was interesting. I'm going to throw this down there because how they figured it out and everything was an interesting read. I think we can all learn from that type of stuff. Yeah. I also, though, understand Microsoft's standpoint. It wasn't a critical, so. Toyota, we talked about how it's been leaking for decades, literally over a decade. Customer location information, found out that another 250,000 people, 250,000 sounds much worse than 250,000, people's location data for the last, 11 years. Pretty horrifying. Don't buy a Toyota vehicle. That's what I would, that's probably what I would say. I don't know. This is not car. I've heard that they're great vehicles. I don't personally own one, but this is pretty bad. Pretty bad. Second, what, it was like 2 weeks ago that the first one, this is pretty rough. On top of that, critical firmware vulnerability in Gigabyte systems exposes 7 million devices. We've talked about the UEFI. I don't know why I want to put the I first. We've talked about it before. We talked about how the one, I forget who it was. It wasn't Gigabyte, but they actually leaked their keys because of their attack on them. And now Gigabyte actually found a backdoor-like behavior within Gigabyte systems. Which is pretty bad. It allows you to enable the UEFI firmware of the device to drop a Windows executable and retrieve updates in an unsecure format. So, anyhow, yeah, I don't know too much more about it than that. But I'm guessing that they will have a patch if it's patchable, and you should get it as soon as possible. I didn't see anything on a patch for it, so yeah. Now this one I put here in security, but it could also be in AI because I believe with I agree with Russell's. Yes, it's an issue with motherboard firmware. I'll send you a link to this article. Right. Not a Gigabyte server. A Gigabyte server would be much better. But this is in the firmware. which means like you have to update. But as far as it says Gigabyte has since acknowledged and addressed the issue, but I didn't see a link to the patches. So hopefully you can go ahead and go update your motherboard firmware. Although the problem with this statement is updating the firmware on your motherboard isn't necessarily always straightforward. I don't know if Gigabyte has the utility. I don't actually run a Gigabyte motherboard. But even then, sometimes, especially if you have a newer motherboard, like if you got the PCI 5 motherboards, the PCI Express 5, like the next gen, it's not always straightforward, and it's not always where, especially somebody like me, I don't usually have a problem with this. But I'm talking about the other 6 million people with a Gigabyte motherboard. It can make you brick your machine if you do it wrong. If you power cycle it through it, or there's a plethora of ways of screwing it up. Yeah, everyone with Gigabyte products. I do not. I actually do not. I'm not just saying it because I'm on stream and I don't want to leak what I have. You guys actually know what I have because you helped me debug internet issues with what I have. So, I'm screwed. All right. This could have gone into the AIML because I am inclined to agree with Russell on what brought us down. So earlier this week. Now again, availability is part of security. That's why I put it in here. The Internet Archives went down twice, and both was because of extreme loads. So tens of thousands of requests per second, launched from exactly 64 virtual hosts. This is actually kind of an specifically interesting number. Tens of thousands a second is actually a lot. If you actually look at the requests per second of your web server, tens of thousands, so we're talking about like 50,000 requests per second, is a lot more than you might think, especially if you're requesting files, which if you're talking about the Internet Archive blog, or the Internet Archive, you're actually requesting files. You're not talking about necessarily a small payload with each one of those. So think about 50, 100,000 requests per second of an actual document. This can be a lot more than what you're thinking it is. Anyways, so first they blocked those IP addresses, those 64 IP addresses. Everything came back fine. Then another 64 addresses started the same type of activity a couple hours later. Now Russell believes, and I am inclined to agree with him, that this was somebody spinning up a machine learning thing on the Internet Archive's data. Now, what I would say to anybody, if they're wanting to do this, is if you're starting a large project, please contact info@archive.com. The other thing is, if you're doing this, if you're hitting anybody's and you want to be nice, the nice neighborly thing to do is let's say you want to hit 64. And I think that this is just good manners. If you want to be good manners, and especially if you're not paying for it. If you want to have 64, you spin up one machine first. You spin up the second machine next. You spin up the third machine next, and you slowly, over 4 hours, spin up all 64. Because a lot of people actually have to scale up their services and can't handle 64 new machines hammering the service. So, yeah. Learn to be a good neighbor. Don't DDoS on accident. Like, that's the thing. This was probably an accidental DDoS, but let's not do that as a community. All right, that's it for security. Did anybody else see anything else in security that we should know? Now remember, in each of these sections, please feel free to bring your own articles. We're going to cover cloud news now, so if you have something, get that ready. But later on, we're going to talk about AI, and then later on after that, we have some open source, and then at the very end, we have an article that I think you guys will have fun going over. I haven't read it yet. It's called 10 Coding Habits That Make You a Bad Programmer, and guess what? We're going to get to read it. We're going to get to react about whether we think that's a bad habit, and we're going to get I stream on I stream some of my coding, and I'm particularly bad about live streaming. I'm slow while doing it, and I can't I like get sidetracked checking chat and things like that. But guess what? You guys are gonna get to see which bad coding habits I have, because I have some, probably. I'm guessing about 5 out of the 10. So hopefully not more than that. So, all right. So let's get into the cloud news. Retiring the AWS documentation on GitHub. So I read this. It's kind of sad because I've seen this happen before. AWS documentation didn't actually move to GitHub. It was just mirrored to GitHub. So they're closing this down because basically what happened was that they didn't actually move to GitHub. They didn't have their documentation writers write on GitHub. They still use their internal systems because none of them wanted to learn Git. Or that's at least my assumption when reading this. And so it then just became a mirror, and it became a painful mirror to make sure was up to date, and thus they're just shutting it down and keeping their documentation just as you can't see it on GitHub, because it doesn't really bring value if you can't contribute to it. Also, as a mirror, it can't really be contributed to. You're not having the community help you. You are just giving them another place to read it. So it's not really that useful anyways. So that's happening. The other thing that's happening is the general availability of the AWS Database Migration Service serverless, which is a mouthful to say, at the least. Today, AWS announced the general availability of AWS Database Migration Server serverless, which automatically provisions, scales migration resources to make database migrations easier. So what this is, it's actually not very clear from the name, is a serverless database migration. Again, I think that this had a lot of keywords. I would hope that a database migration would be serverless in really, if you're providing a managed a service. I'm really frustrated with the serverless word. I'm probably going to have to make a YouTube video on it. That being said, I do have an update to my streaming on this next week. The next 2 weeks, I'm going to stream as I can. I have a lot of videos to make and a lot of content to create, and I want to actually double down and focus on it some. I also have a lot of programming to do, and the little time that I get to do it, I might not stream it because I'm a lot more effective when I'm being in hermit mode. So just as a warning, I'll see if I stream during the week. My Saturday stream is still going to happen. Don't worry about that. That's the one most people attend anyhow. All right, Amazon Fraud Detector announces event orchestration with Amazon Event Bridge. Now, I don't know that you want to use Amazon Event Orchestration, knowing how they had that entire painful blog that I have a video, I think a pretty fun video too, coming out later this week on the notorious Amazon is giving up microservices. I think a lot of people got it wrong making a video on it, but anyways, event orchestration with Amazon Event Bridge. If you're using Event Bridge, which I think is a pretty good service on AWS, if I'm going to be honest, a little bit pricey, a little bit expensive, but pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. So Amazon Fraud Detector announces event orchestration with Event Bridge. So they kind of combine two services to make them a little bit more powerful. I like it. Amazon AWS AppSync merged APIs for GraphQL Federation. So this is quite a bit in one little sentence. So GraphQL Federation, kind of powerful, especially if you want to provide GraphQL. Usually that provides doing the computation on your side, and can be a little bit painful. So anyways, merged APIs is something that enables you to have a GraphQL schema composition on their AppSync APIs. So basically they're REST APIs for AppSync. Yeah, so a merged API is a single GraphQL API composed from multiple source GraphQL APIs, representing different services or data sources. So basically, it's a way to allow you to combine these things and federate that. So yeah. Anyways, I don't know. This is I haven't used it. I don't know if it will be powerful. If you're a big app sync person, there it might be really powerful for your merged APIs to be able to be federated into GraphQL. GCP had a much smaller week with just an update to their pricing of Cloud Deploy was the big thing that was released on here. We have one other article that we'll get to with that they did with ML classification in BigQuery. But the Google Cloud Deploy got a price reduction. So the price of active delivery pipeline is reduced. Also, their single target delivery pipelines no longer incur a charge. So you can have the active delivery pipeline charge has been reduced, and the underlying service charges continue to apply. So you can see their new pricing page if you want to see that. So basically, they've reduced the cost, which is good. All right, build a image data classification model with BigQuery ML. All right, so I think that this was a cool article. We've talked about ML. We've done a little ML on my stream. But if you're wanting to like get jump started in a cloud, like if you have a project you need, your company needs, and you just want kind of the easy way. This looked fairly easy. You might be throwing money at GCP if you do it, if you use it, because you're using BigQuery's unstructured data analysis feature. And it's highly leveraging all of GCP's products, but it looks fairly easy to just get going and having something that's kind of production ready. So if that's you, I'd give it a look. I'd give it a check. That's right. All right. Azure released the Ingrads V620 series of virtual machines. If you ever wanted to game on a VM, these Ingrads are GPU, CPU, and memory resource balance. And they have some pretty beefy CPUs and GPUs for cloud instances. We're looking at AMD Radeon Pro V620 GPUs as epic CPUs. They're actually pretty epic CPUs. So you can go check them out, but they're pretty well balanced, pretty beefy if you're trying to game in the cloud. The cool thing is, like, these quarter GPUs, so like virtualized GPUs, I don't know how these will perform, but it's cool that they're giving cheaper GPUs. I also wonder how well these would do in a cheaper machine learning pipeline. I'm not sure how they would, how well they could be leveraged and utilized. I know that they're made for gaming. I don't game in the cloud though. So I was wondering how these might also do for some like burstable machine learning pipelines. So anyways, yeah, and they weren't too expensive. A lot of times you get GPU instances that are really pricey, and they're more expensive, don't get me wrong, but they seemed not too bad. There was Microsoft cost management updates. A lot of AMD GPUs are not used in ML. A lot of ML is geared towards like CUDA, built on the CUDA, but I don't know that they would do horribly. You know, if somebody wanted to send me one of the newest gen AMD GPUs and a newest, I would benchmark the two for a machine learning. I don't know that people do that, especially. I think one of the big reasons, if I had to guess, and I'm a guessing person, is that NVIDIA makes server GPUs, like a lot of really good, like the A100 series and onward, the A series, that are designed for servers. Whereas I don't see that as much from the AMD ones. If you had to ask me, I would say that that's probably why they dominate, not just because the CUDA stack and what's their new stack. They moved on from CUDA. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'll remember in just a second. But those APIs and those languages are actually really powerful. That gives them a certain edge, but I also think that it comes down to their GPUs that are just designed to be in the server, where it's virtualization. I didn't know AMD could have virtualized GPUs until I saw this, where they're actually virtualizing the GPU. Yeah, the A6000 is like a $9,000 card. It's pretty awesome, but it is a very expensive card. I don't know the price off of my top of my head. I'm assuming you looked it up and it's 9,000. It's pricey. It's pricey for sure. Um okay. So Azure released some updates to their cost management center, which is going to allow you to help you right fit your machines. You looked earlier this week. It varies greatly. It's in the bulk. Yeah. I mean, man, I would love an A6000 card. Whew, they're good. I would love to like benchmark some of it. Like, like one thing that I would love to do, which nobody does, probably because Nvidia wouldn't sponsor this, is if I had an A6000 and a 4090 and a 4070, what's the difference in machine learning? Just assuming that I had just the cards, like not, like the A6000 has a lot of enterprise features for the enterprise cloud, but just the raw cards. What is the difference? Is there a difference? I don't know. The A6000 does have a lot more memory. I don't know off the top of my head. I look at them every once in a while. Is it going to be that big of a deal? I know it depends on a couple of things. So, like, if you're talking about large language models, there are some that so like one of the ones wanted to be loaded all in memory. Now there's ways to distribute that though. But the more you can load in memory, the faster you're gonna be able to work for sure. How much does 1 second? I gotta look now. It's only 48 gigs. Yeah. I don't know that that's that big of a deal. Maybe it is. I don't know. That's what I would love to run the test. Like how big of a deal is that? Maybe it's huge. If you know somebody from Nvidia and they'd like to test that out with machine learning, you know a person. I think the 4070 would hurt real bad. I think the 4090 might do better than we think. That would be my guess. Is at 24 gigs, it's only half, and it might actually do a lot better than we think and give it credit for. But I don't know. I could be so totally wrong. All right, so back to the cloud. We're going to get back to AI in just a second. Microsoft cost management updates. They made a lot of updates to try to help you right size, help you actually use what you need, not what you don't need. And so that this is pretty good. This is a pretty good update. And they did a lot of stuff around helping you estimate as well, which is one thing that's really hard. As well as they went into like some like tools for people that are like individuals trying to use Azure to help give them the flexibility, but also set their price targets and stuff and the amount of spend that they want to use. So I thought that was a pretty good update. The generally available 8 terabytes MV2 virtual machine is out. This is a monster of a memory machine. If you're trying to do a big cache, if you want that big cache, they have a virtual machine for you. And these virtual machines are beefy boys, let me tell you. They have 416 vCPUs. So if you guys don't realize, a vCPU can be roughly equated to a thread. So you know how a lot of modern processors have, a core will have two threads, like logical processing. That's roughly what a vCPU could do. So you could look at this as roughly 208. Now I don't know exactly Azure. This is a lot more of AWS, but Azure follows very quickly or very closely. This would be like 208 logical cores, or physical cores, and 416 logic. Anyways, pretty big, and a gig or 8 terabytes of memory. This is a big machine. Over 100 Raspberry Pis. That's right. We should we should make a graph explaining the number of Raspberry Pis per machine. That would be great. So anyways, if you're trying to make a big cache, big Redis cache, you can do it. Now, there's better things than Redis cache. If you're trying to cache, memory isn't maybe the best thing that you can do. I might be biased here, but I feel like the hybrid memory architecture, cost value-wise of Aerospike, is just a better cache, and it's not even a cache. You get sub-milliseconds, and you're not even in memory. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the days of the in-memory cache are kind of dead. I think that you can get the performance out of SSDs that you need out of a cache and still be in physical storage and not pay for the memory. But like I said, I'm biased. General availability, Azure Load Balancer per VM limit removal. So have you ever been in the place where you've wanted 2 load balancers for your single VM? Well, if that's you, you can do it now. Oh, I don't know. I don't get this, but you can have 3 VMs now per physical VM. Do people do this? I must be missing something. Because obviously people do this, and obviously there was demand for it, but I don't get it. And my guess is that they were like getting like really chunky VMs and then subdividing it into smaller VMs, which I'm not even sure why you would do that, because you're on the cloud provider for them to manage your VMs anyways. So just get right-sized VMs. But maybe there's a cost savings that you can get these bigger ones and it's actually a little cheap. I don't know. This seemed a little weird to me, though, that you would want 4 or 5 VMs per, or load balancers per your VM. Maybe I'm missing something, though. Or are Azure's load balancers so flaky that you want redundancy? Whew, okay. Azure Files scalability improvements for Azure Virtual Desktop. So if you use Azure Virtual Desktop, they improve the file scalability. I not tried, so I'm not sure how big of a deal this is, but basically the root directory handle limit basically went up from 2,000 to 10,000. So I guess if you were hitting that, they have more than doubled. That's a 5 times. 5 times. General availability, zone redundant storage for Azure disks is now available in more regions. So zone redundant storage is pretty powerful. So basically what it means is if you're in a region that has zone redundant storage, you can simultaneously basically give yourself automatically for free when you write to your disks, it can be copied into a zone redundant area. Now, that being said, some people don't realize what zones means and what guarantees. I believe AWS is the only one that guarantees a separate zone is in a physically separate place. A lot of the some of the smaller zones for Azure and GCP have zones that are just a separate building, but maybe on the same power. Which is maybe the bigger problem that people have with those, is that they're kind of in, if there was a flood, it's in the same geographical area. And AWSs are a little bit more spread apart in general, or at least on separate power. But that's not necessarily true of Azures and GCPs. The DNS on the load balance API gateway is rubbish. It just remembers dead machines for a random amount of time. No way to flush the DNS cache. That sounds like a problem that you have as a software engineer, and you're just like, I don't know why I still have that problem today. And why in my application code I have this is getting around this X problem that is out of my control. But it happens all the time. Last real cloud thing before we get into our machine learning. I try to avoid artificial intelligence because I don't like the term artificial intelligence. We can get into that, but I really don't like it. D1, we turned it up to 11. D1, if you use D1 like I tried, it's Cloudflare's serverless database, managed database. I want to say managed database. I hate the word serverless at this point. It's their managed database where you don't have to worry about the machines that it's running on. Well, if you used it in its beta or alpha, I think it was alpha that I signed up for, it was rubbish slow. It was rubbish. To borrow my, I believe that's rubbish. I believe that's British for garbage. Absolute garbage. It was pretty bad. That being said, it's gotten improvements. So we'll have to try it again. Because they said that they went through a lot redoing the performance scalability on the back end. And it should be a lot better nowadays. So we'll have to give it a try. I just saw this. I haven't touched it recently for a while. I did try it, and it was pretty rough. So yeah, basically they went from query performance of 40 milliseconds to 1.82. This is still not great, but it's okay. This is okay. This was where it was literally rubbish. Worst I've touched. I didn't even make a video on it because I was excited about it, and it was just unusable in my opinion. If your query is taking 37 milliseconds, almost 38 milliseconds, it's not even worth it to touch. On the Microsoft Northwind DB example, I'm not sure what you're asking, Russell. I'm not. It says he uses the Northwind Traders DB. Microsoft used to use Northwind in their example for access. Oh, I didn't know that. I did not know that. Okay. Let's jump. You know what? I have a little Okay, we're gonna jump into AI ML right now, but let me reorganize some of these tabs because I accidentally had a rant about Google. Because yeah, they annoyed me. Okay, let's talk about AI ML. There's some ups and downs this week as far as AMIL. Cool, I'll have to check it out. I did not know that they used that. There's been some ups and downs. There have been some new release products, and you know what? I'm going to talk about first. The thing that I'm going to talk about first is naming is difficult. I get it. You can my cloud, like the core product that's powering my cloud is called Eddington right now because I couldn't come up with a better name right now. Maybe I come up with a better name. Maybe it stays Eddington forever because naming is difficult. Finding that perfect fit of something that just works is difficult. Rolls off the tongue. I get it. I absolutely get it. When you enter a market, you've got to think about what other people are in the market. And you know what you really need to do is you need to think about what your competitors are called, because one of the worst things you could do is release your product named as the same thing as another product that's been in the market for months. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? Let me pull up what I'm talking about. We all know this. GitHub Copilot. Everyone knows it. It's been out for months. Months and months and months. You can pay for this. If you release a pair programmer, you come up with a different name, like Whisperer, like whatever you want. Tab 9. Don't know, don't care. What you don't do is release Blink Copilot. I'm sorry, generative AI for security workflows sounds really, really good. Yeah, it was out in 2022. But don't call it Copilot. And for the love of all things good in this earth, if you're up codes and you come out with an AI powered co-assistant, don't name it Copilot. We get it. I'm sorry, I had to rant on this. Even though both of these things look cool and interesting and I like it, I actually am really interested in Blink Copilot. The problem is the problem Copilot. Now, I am not sure whether it's actually any good because as far as I've seen, all the research and studies say that Copilot's generative AI is bad for security, but maybe one that's specifically trained around security is going to give Blink Wingman. Thank you, Russell. You should start a consultancy because these people need your help. Like I don't have the answers of what to name. I can tell you what is a bad name. Like I am fairly good at saying that was a bad choice. Stop it. Fairly good at that. So I'm interested in seeing this. And getting access to this and seeing how it works and what it does. So it's a generative AI for security workflow automation. I don't even know entirely what that means. But yeah, it helps you generate secure workflows. So I'm interested in trying it out. We'll see if I get a stream on that later this week or not. Keep reminding me. I have a list of stream ideas of just things that I would like to try out. So I'd like to try those out with you guys on stream. But yeah, same goes to you, Upcodes. This looks interesting. You know what? One second. Cone of Silence. There's one that I didn't put in here that we actually did try on stream. that we did try on stream. You know what? Came up with a new name. Meet Cody, the AI that knows your entire code base. Now, I actually tried this out. It's not GitHub Copilot. It's actually kind of different. You can ask it codes, you can ask it for recommendations for your entire code base, and I think I like it. It's kind of like gives you what Copilot X would, plus with just GitHub Copilot, so you don't have to pay for the X. I kind of like it, but it's not called CodePilot, it's Cody. Anyways, kind of cool, but yeah, work on your naming. Oh no, did Google use Cody for one of their... Oh no. Oh no. Shoot. When did this come out? I'm going to have to start giving a score for naming. I'm going to have to start giving a score. You get negative 20 points if you call it Copilot. Seriously. Next person to call it Copilot. All right. iHeartMedia tells employees to steer clear of ChatGPT. Workers, this is after ChatGPT has done a bunch of stuff to try to make it so that companies feel safe. But yeah, iHeartMedia joins another group, the ever-growing group of people banning ChatGPT. This includes, Apple, Spotify, and Verizon, but it also includes others like Panasonic and Samsung that have banned it. Samsung is the one that suffered a massive leak from ChatGPT. This is kind of becoming... This right here might be the bigger hurdle that generative AI actually suffers. I think a lot of companies are wary of who owns the copyright to material generated from it. And if you use that generated material, does that copyright apply to the rest of your code? Because if somebody rules that can't be copyrighted, because that's actually happened for books that are generated by AI, you can't get the copyright on them. And so I think a lot of people are starting to worry. Now, that being said, there was some cool things that came out. Another security thing, we talked about Blink's generative thing, but also CrowdStrike introduced Charlotte AI, generative AI security analysis. So this is also kind of interesting. I have actually sent both CrowdStrike as well as Blink an email, seeing if they'd give me an interview to talk about their products and give me a demonstration, because the security thing I think is really hard, and I think this is a really good use of it if it actually works out. Some of the tough questions I plan on asking him, which I detailed in my emails, was how do they make sure that what the AI is saying isn't making their thing more insecure? Do they have benchmarks for that? Do they have tests for that? How are they, testing their AI on that type of stuff? So, well, I doubt it. But yeah, we'll see if they respond to my emails. Another blow to the gut was the eating disorder helpline disables their chatbot for harmful responses after firing the human staff. Now, the human staff unionized and demanded higher pay, and then they decided to use a AI chatbot, and the AI chatbot basically encouraged bad behavior in people that were calling with eating disorders and had no empathy for them. So that was a pretty big loss for AI. So yeah. Yeah, this was pretty bad. It went bad on literally day one. Literally maybe day two. And it was basically basically encouraging people into bad behavior. These are people that called a helpline because they wanted help. And it was literally recommending things to them that were what got them in trouble in the first place. And then it had zero empathy for the person. It didn't want to sit there and listen to them and things like that. So yeah. Anyways, that was a pretty bad blow. This was an article I think you guys should read. I'm not going to go over it to keep down on time. Working with the LLMs behind GitHub Copilot. So this is a cool engineering blog post, probably my blog post of the week. Yes. And it's about machine learning, but it's about the developers that work with the LLM, and it's not about the LLMs per se, but about Cortex, the model behind the coding specific model that GitHub Copilot uses. And basically just, basically it just talks about working with it and the fine tuning they did and the things that they've learned. It's not been too in depth. I wish that they would go more in depth on some of these things because I think it could help developers learn. But I did think that it was worth a read if you're interested in that type of stuff. Something I'm kind of pretty excited about was Google Fiber. Google Fiber is expanding into a new market. I got excited. This is into Franklin, Tennessee. Got some good news that Google Fiber is bringing its high-speed broadband wireless. Do you know why I'm very upset with Google Fiber, though? Very upset. Google Fiber is leaving Louisville, humiliating setback. Tails tucked between their legs, but tails tucked between their legs. They didn't know what winter was and what freezing meant, and so they buried their cables too shallowly. So for the company that prides itself on being the leading in search, they didn't search what temperatures Louisville, Kentucky gets. Absolutely ashamed of themselves. They should be ashamed of themselves. And you know what? Really, they shouldn't expand to another city until they come back to Louisville. Yeah. Get your act together. I'm really jealous of you Franklin, Tennessee people. Now, to help them, I found a little bit of good news because obviously Google doesn't know how to lay cabling very well. Meta might be there to help them. Bombyx is being licensed for product development. So this is a technology that Meta Engineering is coming out with that might solve Google's shameful past. And it's basically a way to weave fiber around power lines. So basically, you can use the existing power lines, and you don't actually have to stretch more power lines. You actually weave it around the existing power lines, and they've basically started Hibot, a Japanese robotics company, has been licensed to produce this bot to actually lay this cable out on existing power lines. So this might be Google's fix to their humiliating failure. Can anybody guess how mad I was? Also, they left our roads in a wreck. They literally just tore up our roads, and we're like, yeah, that didn't work. See you guys. They did have to pay for fixing most of the roads, but... All right, let's move on to better news. Industry leaders launch Rise to accelerate the development of open source software for RISC-V. So the Linux Foundation is pushing forward this Rise platform, which is going to hopefully push forward software development on Rise. Now, I am very interested in the Null cloud when we finally have our own hardware, being one of the first clouds to support RISC deployment. So hopefully, we will be a leader in RISC deployment. Hopefully that brings you not only power savings, but also just a full open stack source. I think that would be pretty cool to say from the hardware to, the cloud software stack. It's all open source. I think that would be pretty powerful. So yeah. In WebAssembly, something that I found from Wasmer was announcing WASIX. So wow, this is amazing. But a lot of WASI, yeah, lots of it. Today, we're very excited to launch the initiative that will start shaping the future of WebAssembly in both the browser and the server. So we talked about some of the problems with WebAssembly on the server, and WASIX is kind of hoping to solve some of those. The ambition of WASI was a great one, and we continue to support it, but its slow iteration pace is holding us back on progress of making WASM widely adopted. Now, that being said, Docker also has support for WASM in Docker, which is an interesting concept because if that can be brought to containerd in a really fluid way, you could almost use WASM in Kubernetes without ever thinking about whether it was WASM or a container. Is having fiber optic continually moving with wind a good idea? Power lines get blown. Yeah, I don't know, Russell. I don't know. I'm not an expert in effects of movement on fiber channels. So, I mean, the idea behind is that the light travels down the center. If it was perfect and most efficient, it would travel straight down the center. But the thing is that the sides are reflective, right? So they actually bounce them off the side of the walls. And so would movement really affect that? I'm not sure. The other thing that I would have to lean more heavily on is that they also do like couple different signals throughout the same line, the multiplexing of it. And so I don't know if that could interfere with that, but I'm guessing no, or else they wouldn't be doing it. That would be funny, though, that if they've done all this research and then wind caused it problems, that would be not funny, but horrifying. Oh, more over time, would it shatter the line? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think time will tell. All right, so WASIX is today for the community to build awesome apps and complete their runtime. So basically, WASI supports some of the things that weren't supported in WASI. So WASIX it's WASI with an X, but WASIX brings Berkeley sockets, forking, and many other things that are available in almost the whole life of POSIX. So some of the problems that WASI had, like not being able to be multi-threaded, and Berkeley sockets, eBPF, and those types of things that are really, really, really powerful couldn't be leveraged. So anyways, I think this is probably a pretty big step. Yeah. So cool. Huge win for privacy. I don't know if this is a huge win for privacy or a huge win for whoever collects the 1.2 billion euros from Facebook. It is the largest fine on record. Now, Facebook will still appeal this, so it's not nearly dead and done at this point. But this is about GDPR, and GDPR protections and how they were moving data to the U.S. I don't know everything that goes into it, but this is a massive fine, 1.2 billion euros. That is huge. That is huge. All right, let's talk about some language announcements. We have two. Rust 1.70 is out. Now, I think I'm more excited about Rust 1.71 because I think in Rust 1.71, I believe it will be the solidification of async in traits. So the async trait is something you need an external crate for right now because it's not possible. So that's not hit yet here on June 1st, but that is in the near future, and I'm very excited about 171. I think it's 171. I correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. Anyways, All right, what else is in here? I think the biggest thing is this sparse by default for crates.io, which is going to make crates.io much faster. There were a few things here for once cell. Is terminal is a newly stabilized trait that allows you to find out if the stream is actually a terminal. So if that's something you need, this doesn't affect me a whole lot. But it could be a pretty big deal if you're writing something that's terminal. Then there's also the named levels of debug information. Probably good. I'm not gonna say this is the biggest deal, but probably good. Enforced stability of the test CLI, which is probably a pretty big deal. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then there's some stabilized APIs. I'm not sure these are the biggest deal. The binary tree maps were interesting, especially because for the database, we're going to be doing a index, and a binary tree is actually one of the most useful ways of making or one of the most common ways for making an index. So we're going to talk about several different ways of indexing, maybe do a couple different ones. And then other than that, yeah, just pretty standard stuff. So nice job to the Rust community, even though they had a blow to the gut last week. Another a drop in the ocean compared to the amount they wasted on Second Life. Burn meta. It's not called Second Life. I don't know what it's called. If you don't know the drama of what happened, the Rust community. So I'm going to release a video because I feel compelled to do it at this point. But the Rust community has suffered many ups and downs over the last years, forever. And they're all caused by the Rust project leadership. And the problem is, I have never touched such an expressive, such a performant, and such a memory-safe language as Rust. And I absolutely love Rust because of it. I think it's just better in almost every way than Go. And I like Go. That's not me hating on Go. That's just me saying, like, everything that they did, I think that they did better in Rust. The problem is, it's off-putting to some people, especially for me. I make a YouTube series on learning Rust and things like that. When the people that are supposed to be growing the community seem to try to shrink the community. They do stupid stuff, whether it's downgrading a keynote speaker because, well, they're not sure why, because they never really talked about it, and maybe just one person decided to downvote or downgrade them and nobody really knows because they're so dysfunctional. Or because they decided to make a new policy for the fact that I could probably not say that I made a Rust class without saying I'm also not sponsored by the Rust Foundation, and the Rust Foundation had no part in this, and I can't actually call it a Rust class because they have the trademark on that. And they're completely out of touch with the Rust community. Effectively, that's what we have to contend with. Now, it's a fantastic language, and I don't want people to see the Rust Foundation as the reason for not being involved in Rust and helping promote it, because we can be our own community and it's fine. You know, a lot of people that use C++ or C# or those languages aren't part of the community that makes them anyways. So that's, I guess, what I'm going to make my video about is you don't need to be necessarily involved with the community that makes the language to use the language, to enjoy the language, and be involved in the community outside of the people making the language. But yes, Rust, people that have been with Rust for a while have gotten accustomed to poor leadership. Sorry, you asked. Watch last week's episode. I actually went in detail on that. So I do this news once a week. Every other streaming is just me writing some code, doing some stuff, working on stuff that I'm going to make videos about, and whatnot. So let's get back to the news. That is the Rust release. There's also the TypeScript 1.5. I'm not going to go through these. I don't know TypeScript well enough. I use TypeScript at a very high level, very poorly. That's my ability to TypeScript. But it's released, so if you guys are big into TypeScript, like TypeScript, want to use more TypeScript, go check it out. It also released. If I didn't cover your favorite language here, and there's a new release of it, now is the time to send me these things. Remember, you can bring your own articles here to make sure that I cover the things that are interesting for your communities. I try to follow the biggest ones that I can. Something that got me pretty excited was I've been worried that Intel's release of their GPU wasn't going to stick. I really hope that Intel keeps making GPUs because it adds competition to the market. Their initial GPUs are good bang for the buck, I think. Sparkle, you know, I hope this isn't it's not US right yet. I don't know what I clicked there, but the Intel they are making graphics cards based off the Intel Arc platform, which I think is really good for the GPU marketplace. Now, this isn't in the US. You can see it's Japanese. So we'll see. We'll see if it works out. But I'm really excited that they're actually making the effort to it, and it probably means that Intel is at least looking to support the platform for another generation. At least that's kind of what I'm taking from it, because I don't think that Sparkle would go through this effort if they didn't have some confirmation from Intel that they were going to continue working on this. So yeah, I was pretty excited about that. All right, we have 3 open source projects I was going to cover really quickly because I saw them. And one thing that I want you guys to do, at the end of July, I'm hopefully going to have released the Null Cloud. And what I want to do, we're going to want to make some things that are just really easy. But I'd also like to have just some managed apps that people can deploy really easily. Just one-click deploy applications, a little marketplace like that. And so there's a couple things like Plane, Valor, and Zulip that really struck my fancy in those. So if you guys don't know what Plane is, it's an open source self-hosted project planning tool. So this is counter to Jira. What's up? How are you doing? If you're new here, this is, every other time that I stream, we code some on the Null Cloud or on my AI chat or Twitch alerts, which kind of work, but they kind of are, well, they work. It's just hard to read. Too small font. We'll fix that Tuesday. If I stream on Tuesday, we'll fix that on Tuesday. But today is the news, and we're going over the news. So Plane is an open source self-hosted planning. So it's a contender to Jira. I thought that this would be really cool to have as a one-class. Is it as awful as Jira? It's supposed to be way simpler. So I've been testing a couple planning tools. So Plane isn't the only one that I haven't actually tested Plane. I just found Plane in my drive to find the best planning tool. So I am going to try it, but I think it would be pretty cool to have as a one-click deployment where you could have your own Plane app. So it's that. Valor is basically a competitor to Discord, so that's also a pretty neat thing to be able to deploy pretty quickly. Null, yeah. So I do a lot of things with Null. This is a Null pointer, as you can see. I think the shirt's pretty hilarious. You get a Null pointer. I have the classic Null pointer, which is like a finger pointing, and yeah. I like the word null. I think that it brought a lot to the computing community as a whole. Your mom just followed me, which is pretty cool. Actually, if my alerts are working, did my alerts work? 1 second. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Maybe it popped up already. I wasn't paying attention. It did work. But I don't know if it... I don't know that it Oh, no! Oh, no, you won't believe. It did work, but I'm on the news one. So this is usually like how I share my desktop. And so it doesn't have the alerts there. I'm so sorry. You had an AI-generated alert, and you didn't get it because I didn't set up OBS correctly. Let me read it really quickly. I'm so sorry. We just finished it last week, so I'm a little new to using it. So this is what the AI, as a personalized welcome message to the Null community, said to you. Deep in the forest, a lone adventurer named Your Mom stumbled upon a mystical portal. As she stepped through, she found herself transported into a magical world of wonder. There she met a wise old wizard who revealed to her the secrets of the realm. Inspired by her newfound knowledge, Your Mom decided to follow the wizard and his teachings, and so she became your new follower. I wish that had been on screen. I'm sorry. It was fantastic. Oh, you saw the pop-up? You just couldn't read it? That's the problem. It needs to be white text or something. It needs work, but it's completely... we made it. It's open source. Anybody could have their own generative AI on their stream for follow and subscribe events. It's actually fantastic. Yeah, Tuesday. Look, I wasn't going to stream Tuesday, but Tuesday we're going to stream and we're going to fix it so that it sucks less. Because right now, it's hard to impossible to read, and I get it. I screwed up. But it's still pretty unique. I don't know of any other streamer that has generative AI powered Twitch alerts. All right. Now that your mom's following me, I'm sorry. That's a great joke. It's a horrible joke. I'm sorry. I'm not 5. Yeah. So I found these, a threaded open source team chat. These seem like cool things. They seem like things that are possibly also awesome to have one-click deployment on the Null Cloud. So right now, it relies on ChatGPT because we wanted to get a product out there. The goal is to actually train it ourselves and actually host it ourselves as well. So that's on the docket. We just got it working. We spent like 2 weeks making the application itself just to listen to Twitch streams, Twitch events, and then handle them, generate the AI, and then make a system to display them on screen as well, because you have to actually display it in a web browser, because that's how you pump them to the screen. So the idea is to eventually make our own low-level large language model, but we haven't done that yet. Especially because right now the open source ones are a little bit difficult to train, but I'd love to train our own, specifically we've trained it to be a Dungeons and Dragons, and I would like it to continue on that and like train it specifically for that, so I think it would be fun. All right, last thing is this. 10 coding habits that make you a bad programmer. I haven't read this myself. This was our article to read together. We're going to get to read it. We're going to get to talk about whether we agree with these as bad programming habits. And then we're also going to get, since you guys watch me program, and I don't do really well live programming, but since you guys get to watch me live program, we're going to get to have a truthful talk about how many bad habits I have. I'm afraid it might be more than I was hoping for. Oh, you're making an AI? That's awesome. What AI are you making? All right, first one here. The art of coding and pitfalls of overconfidence. Programming is a fantastic, fantasizing. I'm not sure why I trouble reading that journey. A dance between logic and creativity. But dear reader, have you ever wondered if some of your habits are holding you back? Let's dive into the first two habits that might be sabotaging your coding prowess. Master of all, ace of none. Okay, this is 100% me. 100% of me. No, it's jack of all trades, master of none. I don't know. I'm not even a master of any. Having a crocodile in the office is a bad coding experience. Bad coding habit. A low-level language model? Cool. You'll have to share it. Love to see it and share it with my community. I have a Discord. You can join it, share your stuff there, and share it when we do the news or whenever I'm streaming. All right, this is not the saying. Imagine trying to learn every language spoken on Earth. Daunting, isn't? The same applies to programming language. It's tempting to dip your toes into every language out there, but the result, you might end up being a jack of all trades, master of none. This is the actual saying, not this. I agree with this. Don't try to learn, especially if you're new. You shouldn't learn too many. I'm only decent at like 3 languages, and they happen to not be great languages to be decent at. That's like C++, Go, and Rust. And so that kind of sucks because people are like, oh, well, wouldn't a web API be so much better in .NET? And I was like, if only I knew C#, maybe. But yeah. Oh, thank you. I should have a chatbot. I should have that. Thank you, Russell, for doing that. I still find at just 3 languages, I feel like I'm a jack. I feel like in every single language, I can point to people that know the language a lot better than I do. I'm not saying I'm bad at the language. I'm not sure that I'm a master of any of them. I wouldn't point to my ability to write Go or Rust as a master of any of those languages. And you know what? I also know Java because I wrote a lot of Java like 5 years ago. Yeah, but definitely not a master of that at this point. I try to not to talk about Java. Any Java. All right, the number 2, the overworking overlord. It's 2 a.m., your eyes are bloodshot, your fingers are flying over the keyboard, and you've forgotten what sunlight looks like. That's just a factor of working in the basement. Not that I work too much. Sounds familiar? Overworking is a common pitfall for programmers. It's like eating too much chocolate. It feels good at the moment, but the aftermath is a productivity crash. Okay, I don't know that this is... I don't know that it makes you a bad programmer. I think that this is a bad life choice. I don't think that this makes you worse. So when I think of something that makes you worse, I think doing it over time makes you a worse programmer. I think this is just bad for your health and bad for your life. I'm not sure it makes you worse over time. It's not a constructive use of your time. But okay, so yes, if you're tired in programming, you'll be worse at it. But I think what I was saying is like it doesn't mean if you got rested that you are now a worse programmer, does it? I don't. Maybe if you're chronically tired, you become to do bad habits and you practice those bad habits. Okay, I'd go with that. In the words of coding, it's easy to lose track of time. The thrill of solving problems and the joy of seeing your code come to life can make you forget everything else. But beware, dear reader, for this path leads to the dark side. Oh, the dark side. The realm of burnout. Overworking can make you feel like a hamster on a wheel, always running, but never reaching your destination. So take breaks, maintain a healthy work-life balance, and remember your health is your true wealth. Yes, I agree. And maybe especially if you said that it caused you to practice bad behaviors, that definitely is easy to see. Hey man, if you follow now the nice white background, you might actually be able to see the text. Not read it, but see it. All right. The lone wolf. Coding isn't a hermit's job. I don't know if I agree with that. Sure, you can lock yourself in a room and crack a complex problem, but remember, collaboration is at the heart of innovation. Reach out, share ideas, and learn from your peers. After all, two heads are better than one, right? As programmers, we often find ourselves lost in the world of code, oblivious to the world outside. It's easy to become a lone wolf, isolated from the pack, but remember, collaboration is the lifeblood of innovation. It brings fresh. Yeah, I agree with this. I think that there's a place for both. It's like, I am not super productive when I'm streaming coding. I am so much more productive when I don't stream code, but it's also really good, the collaboration. There's times when you guys call out, like this last stream, you guys called out inadvertent scope creep, and that was like fantastic. I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, that is 100% scope creep, and things like that. And not even just that, like just innovating on ideas of like how we're going to host things in the Null cloud and how we're going to orchestrate our hardware and things like that. It's really great to share ideas and get collaboration on that. So yeah. The chatbot ban does what we said it. All right. The copycat. A temptation to copy and paste. So okay, so this is me. This is me. I do this. I do this. And this is bad. I get it. I think you. Okay. So I'm sorry. Don't copy and paste code that is wrong to copy and paste. There's a lot of open source code that you can copy and paste, and it's not plagiarism or unethical. It's licensed to do that. The same with the code that's on is, so if you look at code on sites like, so I just disagree from this because of the presumption you can be in legal hot water for copying people's work that you're not licensed to do. But if you're talking about Stack Overflow, they have a license for the code posted on that. And if you're talking about like Apache 2, you are allowed to use the works. Now there are rules on like trademarks and stuff, so you need to be careful about what you copy and paste. Also, when you're talking about copy and pasting, it depends on whether it's the whole work or if it's a specific section. But forking a MIT project is making a copy and is also not unethical. I think it's the worst thing is, I do think that we can get lazy, even with like ChatGPT when it's close enough, but maybe not ChatGPT, but like Copilot, where we copy too much and we don't actually think about the code as well as we would. So I think this copycat is actually bad, whether I agree with this statement. Obviously, it can lead you in legal hot water if you copy code you're not supposed to, for sure. But that's not the majority of code we're talking about. I think it can make you really lazy and not think about the code that you're actually making. It's tempting to make a shortcut to copy and paste someone else's code, but keep in mind plagiarism not. Okay, let's move on about this. The real sin about the copying is that you're not actually exercising the muscle of coding. I think one of the really important things when coding is actually exercising the muscle of coding. You know, I didn't code for like a year and a half before I started streaming it and like working on my cloud and things like that, because I've worked into more management and doing some stuff with that. And I've just coded less, and I really have that muscle of coding, that exercise has gotten worse over time. And so like, yeah, doing the things and experiencing it is the thing. If you're letting something else have that experience and you're not thinking about it, I think it will make you a lazier coder, and that's not good. The race against time and emotional entanglement. Okay, so I like the race against time. And I like the race against time because it helps me avoid scope creep. It's like why I'm going to try my hardest to have the Null Cloud released by the end of July. It's not because I need to get it out by then. I mean, this is just a pet project we're doing on stream. The real idea is that it forces me to cut things that aren't needed. Yeah. You've all been there. The deadline is looming and the panic sets in, but rushing your work can lead to sloppy code. Absolutely. You can't rush the code. You can only get what you can get done. So basically, there's a triangle. There's a triangle. Let me draw this triangle out. This is an important triangle that everyone should know. There's this triangle that exists. This is the triangle. All right. And in this triangle, you have three sides. You have quality. You know, I put it there, but that's not really where it goes. Oh, no. You have quality. You have the Illuminati. That's one thing for sure. But you have quality. You have time. And you have features. And basically, this is almost like the cap theorem, although I would disagree with the cap theorem as well, because really it's pick one, because you have... We'll get onto the cap theorem. Don't get me sidetracked. I guess I'm getting myself time tracked, but you get to pick two. You get to pick two of these. You can't pick three. Let me... So basically, you can either set a time. You can either set a time and the features, but then you're sacrificing quality, which means if you, and this is what this guy is implying here, if you have a deadline for that qualifies both features and the deadline, you're going to sacrifice quality. And he's 100% right. But if you want to stipulate features and quality, then the time is the thing that you can't stipulate. You can't have all three. You can have two. So you can have time, features, or quality, but you can't have all three. Pick two. And you also get the Illuminati in the end. So a deadline doesn't have to create sloppy code. I have worked in teams that released every 2 weeks. There was a deadline that if you wanted it released, it needed to be done beside this time. There are different ways of looking at deadlines. The startups will pick features twice. Can we sacrifice quality and time for features? That should be on a shirt. That's going on my next shirt. The double circle. This is a startup. I picked two. Okay. So I think the point here that they're trying to make is that if you decide to try to force in every feature that you can, that will give you sloppy code. It will give you poorly tested. I don't see that he brings that up, but it also means you'll sacrifice on testing it. You'll sacrifice testing it yourself as well as testing the code. I fall into this sometimes. I think the testing side I have definitely fell into, because I sometimes take the idea of getting a beta feature out is better than getting a perfect beta feature out. But there's a fine line to work there, or to walk there. Actually, one of the things that I'm working on this week is getting a test framework for our operator and the Null Cloud kind of working. Very rough test framework, but it doesn't have a test framework right now. The emotional coder. Here we go. Coding is a logical process, but we are humans, and emotions can sneak in. However, letting emotions dictate your coding decisions can lead to hasty, ill-thought-out solutions. Keep your heart out of your code, and your logical minds take the reign. So, I agree. I'm not an emotional coder, but I also think that this applies to just about everything in life. If you let your emotions decide to yell or to say the things, your emotions are almost always wrong in the moment. Maybe not always. But emotions are things to be leveraged, not necessarily to let them control you. Sure. I think that's just a lifelong thing. All right, the procrastination pitfall of Yeah. Okay, don't procrastinate. The reason procrastination makes you bad code is because of the deadline. You procrastinate thinking that you can get it done, and then you have a deadline and you have to get it done, and then you write bad, crappy code because you had a deadline. Tomorrow, the sweet siren song of procrastination, but it is fast-paced word of technology. Tomorrow might be too late. Postponing projects can lead to outdated solutions and frustrated clients. I think really it just makes you write crappy stuff because you postpone until you don't have time to do it correctly. So then you write crappy code, you don't get time to test it, you don't have time to have iterative feedback because you just busted it out because you had to. I disagree with the general premise, but yes, procrastination does cause problems. The premature surrender. Coding can be tough, and sometimes it's tempting to throw in the towel. I do this. I think it's actually good to throw in the towel sometimes before you get frustrated with it. Throw in the towel, walk away, talk to some people about it, come back with a fresh mind on it. But remember, every great coder has faced challenges and overcome them. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Yeah, for sure. After all, this isn't it better to seek help and learn than giving up and regret? Yeah. Coding can be a tough mountain to climb, the steep learning curve, especially if it's Rust, the complex problems, the bugs that refuse to be squashed. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and give up. But remember, every great coder has faced challenges and overcome them. It's like riding a bike. You fall, you get up, and you try again. This is learning. That's what it is. Feel free to seek assistance when needed. Keep trying, and remember, failure is just stepping stone to success. The unfamiliar code conundrum. Using code that you don't understand is like trying to read a book in a language you don't speak. Using code that you don't understand is like... Is he talking about libraries? Because I don't always understand the library like Tokyo. I use Tokyo all the time. I've never even looked at its code. I didn't even try to read it. It's computer frustrating and prone to errors. Take the time to understand the code before using it. Take note, comprehension is key to effectively coding. Using unfamiliar code is like walking in the dark without... I don't agree with this one. I use code I don't understand all the time. Don't get me wrong, the better you understand it, the better. And the better you understand a library, the better. But you don't... Like, the whole point of having an API and whatnot is so that you don't have to understand all of its code to use it. You have to understand its API, and it will have quirks that you have to understand. But the whole point isn't to understand all of its code and how it works. I disagree with this one. Unless if I'm just misunderstanding what he's saying. And like, don't get me wrong. The better you understand it, the better. Great. But you don't need to think that you have to understand all of the Tokyo API to use Tokyo or all of its code. I've looked at its code like 4 times. The journey to becoming a better programmer. Becoming a better programmer isn't about being perfect. It's about continuously learning and improving. Absolutely. It's about failing and trying again and failing and trying again. Avoid these bad habits. Seek advice. Is this a bad habit? I don't understand. I thought there was 10. I'm not sure. Okay. Bear in mind, every great coder started where you are now, so keep coding, learning, and who knows? Might be a coding superstar. The dynamic world of coding, it better not be dynamically typed. This is in the static world of coding, please. And we don't like the dynamic word, the D word. Please don't use the D word in this community. The journey to mastery is paved with the continuous, probably a Python user, learning and the shedding of unproductive habits. From the pitfalls of trying to master all languages to once the dangers of overworking, we've explored 10 habits. This is not a habit. The journey to becoming a better programmer, that's 9 habits that you can hinder your progress as a programmer. Retain in your memory Collaboration is key. I like this. And originality is your ticket to creating a truly impactful code. I don't know that originality is. Sometimes I think we get too original and we should do like simple code that other people can understand easily, but maybe that's just me. Avoid rushing your work. Absolutely. Keep emotions at bay. 100%. And never shy away from seeking help when needed. Absolutely. Procrastination is bad in anything in life, and giving up too soon are not your friends. And understanding your code is non-negotiable. Understanding your code is non-negotiable? All right. All right, I like it. These are more like... Yeah, I don't know. They're not necessarily habits, but some of them could be habits. Overworking can be a habit, yeah. I'm sorry, like, I didn't even read all of it because, like, it felt very repetitive to me. I agree. I was going through it. It's difficult. I have a conundrum with these. If I'm going to do this, I can't read them ahead of time. And so maybe I should just wait on you guys to give me articles that you've read so you have like some idea of their quality, or that, you know, I'll get really excited about something like it's a Python coder. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we should do there, but we'll work on this section. Maybe because sometimes it's a hit or miss on whether it's a really good article or not. And sometimes, like the AWS one, I knew was going to be a good blog article to cover, which I actually have a video coming out. It's probably going to be like Saturday or Sunday before it comes out. It's taken some editing because there's some not special effects, but special recording that happens for that. I think people will like it. Anyways, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you very much for joining me for this news. Like I said, streaming is going to be sporadic for the next 2 weeks as I have a lot of videos and I have a lot of programming that has to be done. I probably will stream throughout the week some, but it's going to be shorter and or spotty. Tuesday, we are absolutely going to fix the chatbot so you can read the stupid text. That is going to happen. But yeah. Anyhow, thank you so much for you all joining. And have yourselves a fantastic week.